Hello, my name is Amy T. Wigand, and I am here on the Women Drone Responders interview series. And we really appreciate AX Enterprise sponsoring this and several of our episodes here. And today we actually have the newly appointed COO, Abby Smith. Abby, welcome.
Hey, Amy, thanks. I'm really honored to be here. And a big thank you to drone responders and specifically women drone responders. Being with you and the whole community at the national conference last month was really awesome. And it was awesome to see how drone responders really supports the first responder community, be they police officers, firefighters, search and rescue people, ambulance operators, and doing their incredible community support and life-saving things, and bringing drones, this fairly nascent technology, and I mean, when you compare it with like Sanskrit scrolls, into daily operations, and specifically around women drone responders, because despite the fact women are 51% of the community at large in the United States, they're certainly not 51% of the first responder community. And so shout out to Charles Werner too, for seeing the importance of really promoting women and helping women see themselves in a really important industry.
Absolutely. Well, good point. Charles Werner and Chuck Moran actually started Women Drone Responders, two men
So cool.
supporting women, and we've got to do it together, right? So that's
Absolutely.
fantastic. So I agree with that. But also, women supporting women is huge, and AX Enterprise was able to sponsor the Women Drone Responders reception, but also scholarships for 3 students from Elizabeth City State University to come and join us. We also had the Civil Air Patrol on stage. So thank you, AX, for allowing your sponsorship to contribute to 2 days of education for 3 college students, one of which, so proud of her, stood up in front of a whole bunch of her peers and adults and asked for a job. Do you want to tell a little bit more about that?
That was an awesome moment. She's graduating, I think, next month.
Yes.
And she just said, hey, look, I need a job and I'm interested in this industry. And I was so impressed by the level of poise and assertiveness, not aggressiveness, assertiveness to ask for what she needed.
Yes.
And I certainly would love to help her, either be a mentor or if we have a spot that makes sense for her in our company, to bring her on board.
Okay, well, Isabella Lujan, if you're watching, I'll make sure she sees this and gets that offer. Thank you so much, Abby. Well, without further ado, you were recently just appointed as COO to AX Enterprise after being an executive with the FAA for years, and you got your start in air traffic control. Tell us about your start and where you are now.
Yeah, so, you know, as a young woman, and I think that this is true for most young people. Some people have this idea, like when they're 4, I know what I'm going to do, right?
Yeah.
I was not that 4-year-old. I was not that 21-year-old. And so I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I mean, frankly, as a 58-year-old, I'm still wondering, what do I want to ultimately do when I grow up 20 years from now or something like that? But I was looking through the classifieds because there wasn't monster jobs. There wasn't a Google search at that time in 1989. And so I did what everybody did while they were looking for a job, went to the classifieds. So I was in the classified ads. These were alphabetically ordered, and it said accountant. And I was like, yeah, no. It said administrative assistant. I was like, no. It said air traffic controller. Be an air traffic controller. Come take the test. $45,000 to $60,000 a year, which in 1989 might as well have been $1 million. I was like, what? Fresh out of college, wondering, what am I going to do? I was like, I'm going to take that test and I'm going to be an air traffic controller. And that besides this was all I knew about aviation. Well, I took the test. I did really well on the test. I did the medical, I did the security clearance, I did the drug test, everything worked out. And then I waited and waited and waited and almost gave up. And 11 months after I had done all that, they said, report to the academy in a week in Oklahoma City. And I was like, I'm going to be there. And the rest, as they say, is history.
Right, right. And so you started there, and then tell us about how you got into working with the FAA in the UAS space. Make that
Well,
segue. Yeah,
yeah, so that's like a super duper fast forward.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
was with FAA for just over 33 years, air traffic control for the first 10, moved to Washington, D.C., helped with major automation systems development for air traffic systems, went to work for the National Transportation Safety Board as an accident investigator, came back, did safety management, did training for air traffic controllers, engineers, and technicians, and then got a policy job. And while I was helping with regulatory development, economic analysis, aviation policy, the head of the UAS Integration Office, who had been my friend for 20 years, said, Abby, would you be interested in applying for this job?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, yeah, because I had done some drone policy work. And I thought, what a cool way to be involved. And what a really interesting way that drones democratize the skies. The barrier to entry to be an aviator is pretty high because it's an expensive training program.
Yep.
And it's an extensive training program. But the barrier to entry to be a drone pilot or to get into the drone industry in a lot of different ways is very low. And I was like, yes, this is a way to bring the blessings of the sky to so many different people. And so that's how I made that transition. And so for about the last four-ish years of my career, at the FAA, I was an executive and working UAS integration and UAS and advanced air mobility security issues.
Tell us what you did as a UAS integration official executive with the FAA. I'm interested in knowing the deets to that position.
So it was kind of being that connective tissue, not just within the FAA, but to the ecosystem as a whole. So we would meet with companies who were interested in drone delivery and figure out where in FAA we needed to connect the dots, whether it was through the air traffic organization and some operations that were about airspace, whether it was about connecting with aviation regulators to make sure that any sort of hazmat, carriage of goods, or safety protocols were met. And so taking them from, and sometimes working with the department or working with other departments within government to make sure that there were no surprises and then they could really execute their mission. We also worked with first responder organizations like drone responders and with actual police departments and fire departments, really enabling those operations to not interfere with aviation in the traditional sense,
right?
While really creating life-saving capabilities. So it was kind of a lot of talking. It was also reaching out at conferences like the National Conference at Drone Responders or the AUVSI's Exponential or Commercial Drone Alliance had the Commercial UAV connection for a while, and really spending time with the public, educating, prepare them for what was coming and what the art of the possible was at that moment.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I remember working with you in the delivery space, and it was a great time for education and foundational execution. So thank you for your contributions to that part of this journey and this legacy for our industry. So that was your last position with the FAA, if I'm correct. If I'm not, please correct me. And then segue us into, okay, you were there and now you're at AX as a COO. How did you get to AX?
So right in the last several months of my career, I happened to meet the co-founders of AX Enterprise, MC Chruscicki and Pat Baskinger, two brilliant women. And I'd love to brag on them later if you're good with that.
Yes.
And I was up because they were doing this really innovative project. And one of my people that I was working with in this integration office said, you really need to go see what they're doing in person, because I think it's inspired. And I think you need to think about policy implications of what they're doing and how we further this industry. So I went up to Northern New York, met them, and we hit it off. And they said, hey, you know, if you ever leave the government, it sure would be interesting to figure out how we can work together. I said, well, I'm retiring in 5 months. So once I retire and take a little needed vacation, if you want to talk, we will. And so fast forward to April of 2024, and I saw them at AUVSI's Exponential. They said, we're ready to work with you. So I started my own LLC. They hired me as a consultant. I worked with them for about 18 months, and they said, how about we make this like the real deal? And why don't you come over and join us in the C-suite and help us do the good work of AX Enterprise?
Yeah. No,
So it was like something that you hear as a young woman about the importance of networking and about maintaining business relationships. And it's proof positive that that networking and being curious and caring about people regardless really can pay dividends.
Yeah. Amen. Okay. No, that's great. And yes, I definitely want to take you up on your offer to tell Pat and MC's story. What a great founder story. So I'm going to let you have the stage here and introduce us to Pat and MC, even though they couldn't join us today.
So, yeah. So Pat Baskinger, an engineer and a math magician by training, wanted to work for the Air Force Research Lab. And there was a backlog waiting. So she took a side hustle. It wasn't a side hustle. It was a full-time hustle as a math teacher. And she did that for a little bit, got hired by the Air Force Research Lab, and got involved in incredibly important public infrastructure building things. Meanwhile, there was this other really cool lady in the same area in upstate New York, MC Chruscicki, who was a math and computer scientist by design and started as a math teacher and applied and heard through her network about this Air Force Research Lab opportunity. Well, she got an interview with none other than Pat. They immediately hit it off. She got hired at Air Force Research Lab. They worked there for a little while and decided that they wanted to go into the private sector. So they went into the private sector and they worked for various government, you know, big, I won't provide names because that would be advertising, but some pretty big name system integrators for the government. And then they said, you know what? There was too much structured bureaucracy for their taste. And so they said, let's do something a lot more agile. Let's go out on our own, because these are entrepreneurial women. And so AX was originally called AgileX, and they just shortened it to AX because the idea was innovation should be agile. Right. And they formed AX officially in 2011, and the rest, as they say, is history. Yeah. And they are so inspiring, and they're so smart, and they just constantly are thinking about how can we solve a really hard problem and do something that benefits society, and particularly the United States. And so it's really been fun to be a part of the team.
Absolutely. Well, tell us more about AX. What is AX? What does AX do?
So AX does a lot of really cool things. It's a system integrator. And, you know, just to give you a super high level, one of the things that we do at AX that is really cool is there are 9 official, by law, FAA designated UAS test sites. So they are the operator on behalf of Oneida County for the New York UAS test site. So they help people that are trying to do really cool, hard, innovative things and bring these flying robots use cases, or sometimes just the robot itself or a sensor that supports the robot or a counter tool to
Mhm.
fruition. And so our teams of engineers and pilots assist clients in going from concept to operation. That's just one thing that AX does. The other thing is in helping solve hard problems. The government, it was a combination of NASA and the Department of Defense. We're looking at this thing many years ago of what would UAS traffic management concept be? Would you write an issue paper? Well, they were writing an issue paper and they said, you know, we really should create a software because it's hard to just write an issue paper and do something conceptually. And that was the start of a software that they developed for the government called CLUE. And CLUE provides strategic deconfliction for UAS, but it wasn't enough because they're also operating this test site and they needed total air domain awareness. And so they thought, let's integrate sensors, different radars, different counter tools, lots of different things, as well as this strategic deconfliction that provides intent and volume reservation, essentially, to keep known operations from other known operations into one. And they've been working on this tool that is operational in many government, both Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security locations, but now also for commercial operators. So yeah, so it's cool. Would you like to learn more?
Yeah, totally would like to learn more. Let's pull up a slide we brought here and tell us about CLUEX and the suite that belongs to CLUE, Sapphire X, Dart, and of course, we can talk about the USS and how that works for those who aren't as familiar as others. But and then let's talk about how this is really impactful for public safety and emergency management teams.
Yeah, so you know, it's a PDF and it's probably on people's screen is about a font 4. So I don't want to do a death by PDF, but just real quickly, CLUEX is a whole suite of capabilities. The one that I think is really cool, well, I mean, they're all really cool, but they all build on each other. So we'll start at the bottom because that was the foundation of how this all got together. And that's the USS. Yeah. And that stands for UAS Service Supplier. And this USS tool is an airspace volume. It provides strategic deconfliction. It helps people manage their fleet. And it also becomes interoperable with other providers of this tool around the country, which is really amazing so that somebody can reserve a volume. And if there's someone else that wants to fly, and particularly beyond visual line of sight, they can fly with confidence that other people that are trying to take a similar route have a different volume of airspace they're using and can fly with a lot more confidence. And that was kind of the basis of all that. Mm-hmm. Where it gets built upon is go straight up from there to Sapphire X. Sapphire X can integrate. Right now we have well over 27 sensors that include various different radar systems, that include optical systems, that include acoustic systems, that include sensors that pick up automatic dependent surveillance broadcasts, ADSB, which is a really tough acronym, but it's a sensor that piloted aircraft put out just to be known. Mm-hmm. And so those are just a few quick examples. And then there's something called ATAC, which is really important when you think about public responders, because then it provides this tactical awareness of things that are going on the ground as well as the sky to give people a total domain awareness. Sapphire also has layers that include critical infrastructure. If you want to see where are pipelines, where are electrical grids, where are schools, where are hospitals, so that you really have a good situational awareness. And then a map layer so you can see terrain. Super helpful for an operator.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then you can get overwhelmed because if there's a lot of UAS or piloted aircraft in the sky, what should somebody that's really monitoring the airspace look at?
Mhm.
This is where DART comes in. DART is an algorithm that AX brilliant developers, I wish when I grew up to be as smart as a lot of these really talented young people. They developed an algorithm that looks at the behavior of a drone,
Mhm.
and you can put up a virtual fence around something. And I think in the PDF there, we have the MetLife Stadium,
Mhm.
which is where the final game of the FIFA World Cup is going to be played. It's going to be a very important thing to protect,
Yeah.
right? So you can put up a little virtual fence around it. And so then it's going to be very aware of who's flying around there and who could potentially be coming into that airspace volume where you need people out.
Mhm.
And it provides a red or yellow, orange, and red, which is, similar to kind of a stoplight, alerting to bring people's visual attention to a potential threat. It also has an auditory alarm, which some people like. I get a little overwhelmed by the sensory thing, but the whole point is there could be other things flying around, but ones that are really a threat get highlighted. And I think that's a really valuable tool and something that we at AX are really proud of.
Absolutely. And I know you are working on trustworthy remote ID and also what's called crowdsourced or CS RID. Do you want to speak a little bit more to that to this audience today?
Yeah, since it's not on the sheet, we can take that down.
Yeah.
Thank you, because I missed seeing your face up close. So yeah, so something else that AX has been working on is remote ID. Think of it as a virtual license plate on a drone, just like we have a license plate on our car. It doesn't let a common person know that is my car or your car. It just says, hey, that's a car out there, and that's its license plate number. But one of the challenges was and I'll tell you from my side at FAA, it was really hard to get this across the regulatory finish line because there's so many issues. And one of the challenges was it said to be to do what you can to not be liable to hacking, but it was pretty loosey-goosey. And you can go on the internet right now and find out how you can spoof a remote ID pretty readily. Well, the engineers at AX Enterprise identified that this was a huge problem, and they needed to solve it to make this a part of the layered approach to this ecosystem. And so they did.
Yeah.
So trusted remote ID, not only as the name implies, says you can know that if I say I'm this drone, I really am this drone. It also has a level of encryption that you're not going to be able to hack it unless you happen to have a quantum computer, which quantum computing is another amazing thing. But it's pretty nice to know that unless you're a supervillain, you probably are going to pass on trying to spoof or hack into that drone. That drone is set, so it really is who it says it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then this crowdsourced remote ID is a way to use different drones to provide relays to get a better sense of what's really out there and get a better view of drones that are squawking remote ID. And I'm really proud of the fact that this CS RID finder is deployed in the National Capital Region and was used during the inauguration for drone safety. And that's just but one of the many use cases that we have with the CS RID. And look for trusted remote ID. It's coming, folks. And I think it's a game changer, particularly for beyond visual line of sight operations.
Yeah.
that will be normalized later this summer, mark my words, or maybe early fall. Because to do good BVLOS, you have to reliably know where you are. And AX, once again, was at the forefront of this.
Yeah. Well, you just read into my segue here. I want to talk to you about AX commercializing into the medical delivery space, also energy and utilities. I know this episode is probably going to drop sometime in May. It may be before or after the AUVSI Expo, but you'll be presenting at AUVSI Expo with SUNY Upstate Medical Center, their Air Upstate lead, Steve Roberts. We're really excited to hear more from him. But today, tell us a little bit more about your medical delivery program. And if you want to segue that into your NTAP, that would be great too.
I guess it was in November of 24, we were at this global UAS traffic management consortia that was in Dallas, Texas. And we were talking with Steve Roberts, who is this really innovative, wonderful person in charge of State University of New York, SUNY Upstate. That's the university they're connected with. It's their medical center. And they have a robotics division because they have a traffic problem in Syracuse. And they have the blessing and the curse of being at nearly 100% capacity of beds, which is great, except that all of the logistics that go into a hospital take space. So they've moved their labs out of the hospital, which means they're using couriers, which are subject to ground-based traffic. And they said, we got to get a drone program. So right now, they're flying their labs back and forth about a mile away using visual line of sight, which is really labor intensive. You need somebody to watch the drone. But they've already cut their logistics for lab times by 17 minutes, which, talking to a first responder community, 17 minutes is the difference between life and death.
Yep.
Right. And it's also really helping turn those beds over and increase their capacity.
Yeah.
Well, they've had such wonderful growth, and their mission, which is so noble and so in keeping with my founders, Pat and MC's vision of making the United States a better, more vibrant place, and certainly my commitment to public service as a whole lifelong career. They want to really serve rural medicine and help cancer patients. So they're building this big lab, and it will be ready within a year. Mm-hmm. And that's 7 miles away from the hospitals. Mm-hmm. So that's beyond visual line of sight. Mm-hmm. So they asked AX Enterprise, hey, you've got this cool U.S. service supplier UAS traffic management tool. Mm-hmm. Let's work with the FAA to get our beyond visual line of sight operations up and running ahead of the regulation. And that's this thing called the near-term approval process, or NTAP. Which kind of sounds like Spinal Tap, but isn't. All that said, so we've applied with them, and we are in the very final stages of being totally operational. And what this is going to allow us to fly medical supplies between labs 30 miles away from each other.
Game changer.
And that, of course, 6 mile lab, we expect, once this thing gets operational, to have over 1,000 operations a day. Mm-hmm. And so our service, having these airspace volumes and the strategic deconfliction that's networked, combined with our Sapphire X tool, which provides total air domain awareness for the cooperative aircraft, obviously, but both, when I say aircraft, I mean UAS, as well as piloted, but also non-cooperative, and letting them see definitely where are their drones. So it's a really exciting time for us, and I'm really looking forward to the panel. But thank you for letting me give a little shout out.
Absolutely. I'm excited for that panel as well, and think the world of Steve Roberts, such a stand-up person in our community, an innovator. So thank you, Steve. We'll give him a shout out too. So to talk about this, we're feeling some challenges. We're feeling some crunch. Tell us about the challenges that you're experiencing at AX, and then also let's move that into what are the real successes that you're finding right now, right here to date.
Well, I mean, look, if you get up in the morning, doesn't matter what industry you're in, there's always going to be a challenge. And I think the big challenge, at AX is when do we expect regulation to come in, and what does that mean for scaling? Right. And so, reaching to medical delivery is such a beautiful use case. And another really great use case is the utility community, because that's another piece of critical infrastructure, and I think tightly tied to first responders. Mm-hmm. And so we're really looking at how do we get this wonderful air domain awareness tool that includes UAS traffic management that everyone's going to need to have some level of inclusion on. Yeah. When all things come together with the regulation, and how do we get that into the hands of the people that need it and make it at a affordability partnership level? So right. What does that look like, and how do we scale it based on the needs of the consumers? Because, it's kind of like, Amy, when you got a membership, sometimes what you need is a basic membership, and sometimes what you need is a platinum membership. And it really depends on what your company needs are. So how do we reach people where they are is a thing. I think what I'm really proud of is how things are coming together with SUNY. And I can't tell you which utility companies, but I can tell you there's some really cool utility companies that we're together in partnership, figuring out what level of service do they need for our software. And something that I'm personally really committed to is really figuring out how to partner with state, local, tribal, and territorial first responder units to get these tools in their hands. And let me also say that we're working with at least one other test site to get this total air domain awareness into their hands to help them innovate and bring other products and services to scale. So those are things that are challenges, but they're also really great successes. They are. And then, and then just what we're doing at the test site every day is a giant inspiration to me.
Absolutely. Well, I know just enough about AX to know that there's a great team behind a lot of innovation around the globe. And I do sleep better at night knowing the people at AX are helping keep us safe and secure, as well as managing all the things that we need to in this UAS community. As we close out here, Abby, tell us your best advice for women entering aviation technology.
So be very curious. Ask great questions. A question unasked is a question unanswered. Raise your hand and say, yes, I will. And then do what you have to make it happen. It's so easy for all of us, including myself, to occasionally suffer from imposter syndrome and say, oh, there's someone else in the room that can do it better than me, or that has more experience than me, or has the degree or the pedigree. Forget about it. Yeah. A spirit of curiosity and a spirit of willingness to do it and a willingness to learn is way more important than a pedigree. Mm-hmm. And you bring unique gifts to the world that no one else has because you're a unique person. Yep. And so own who you are and raise your hand, and don't self-select yourself out of a job announcement because you say, I don't meet every single word in that announcement. No one does.
Right.
Just be bold.
Right. No, I love it.
And ask for help. And,
yes.
And I will tell you, Amy, as a young woman, I wish there had been more people reaching their hand and helping lift me. And I'm committed to doing that literally for anyone who is genuinely interested in growing. Because what else at towards the second in the second half of my life is more meaningful than helping people in the first half.
That's right. Absolutely. Well, and I 100% know that as a fact, as you have helped me, and I appreciate you. So as we close out here, and as a supportive person in our community, how can people get in touch with you? And then how can people get in touch with the folks at AX?
Yeah, so what's really fun is in this little box with my name and my company, it's kind of the primer. So if you want to reach me, just put a dot between Abby and Smith and then put an @ axenterprise.com. And I want you to be real aware that it's not an S, it's a Z, enterprise.com. You can reach me there. You can go to our website at axenterprise.com. Again, it's a Z. And I just would have to also, I just want to say, I'm so grateful to MC and Pat for being innovators, having a vision. They've been innovators since they entered the career field and real trailblazers in a very male-dominated career field. They have found their voice, they've found their way, and they've created really great gifts for the world, as well as really meaningful employment for the people that they care for and employ.
Yep. They are something else, and so glad that we have them. Thank you so much for joining us, Abby. And I know that you are also Abigail Smith on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to look up Abby on LinkedIn, it's Abigail Smith on LinkedIn. Thank you so much again. And we're going to close out here with, again, thank you, AX, for sponsoring the Women Drone Responders reception at the National Conference. We also want you to join us at Women Drone Responders, and you can look on our website at DRONERESPONDERS.org. Go to the main nav tab at the top called Groups. Drop that Groups down. You'll see Women Drone Responders. From there, you can join our discussion board. That's where we make announcements about what we're doing, where we're going, who we're talking to, and we can also network within that discussion board. So do not hesitate to log on to DRONERESPONDERS.org and go to Women Drone Responders and join us in the fun. Also, we really had a great time at the national conference, which is usually the second week in March. And that was a success. It was sold out again for I think the 6th or 7th year. And the next conference up is a North Carolina conference in Raleigh, North Carolina at the beautiful North Carolina State University. That's called NCCon. And you can go to events on DRONERESPONDERS.org and look up the North Carolina conference and the information there to either become a sponsor, a speaker, or just attend. We look forward to seeing you there. And then lastly, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, amy.wigand@droneresponders.org. I'd love for you to join us on an episode and be interviewed. If you'd like to sponsor this, we certainly would appreciate that. It goes a lot further, and it can also help support scholarships and STEM initiatives, which is what Women Drone Responders is supporting with the Drone Responders organization. Again, Abby, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you. We appreciate AX, and we'll see everybody next time on the Women Drone Responders interview series.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Drone Responders.
Thank
you. Take care.
Bye.